we live? Nice. Good, okay. This is the Tuesday, August 13th, 2024 meeting of the Carmel Clay Board of Parks and Recreation. Mr. Secretary, will you at least call the roll?
Yes. Jonathan?
Present.
Katie? Absent. James? Currently absent. Judy?
Present.
Joshua? Absent. Jen?
Here.
Mark?
Present.
Lynn? Absent. Linus? Present. Madam President, we do not have a quorum.
Okay, due to the lack of one for a quorum who is on his way, we will at least go through several items on our agenda tonight. I'll go ahead and call us to order.
Sorry. Do you want me to restate the meeting? Okay. In the absence of a quorum, we will at least call to order and await the arrival of our sixth member for a quorum tonight, and we'll go ahead and start with the pledge. The next item of business is public comments. We do have one visitor. Do you have any comments, anything you wish to say to the board? Okay. Okay, good. Welcome. We'll move on to staff reports. Curtis?
Thank you, Madam President. Staff reports are included in your park board packets. Happy to answer any questions that you have.
Are there any questions for Curtis regarding any of the staff reports?
Sounds like we've got 10 minutes, so if you want to ask something, now's the time to do it.
That would be the time, other than the bison and calf are really
Absolutely.
cool.
Why don't you talk about that for a little bit?
So we are super excited that the first major art installation in quite some time within the park system successfully occurred about 2 weeks ago now with Dominique Benhur, who is a world-renowned sculpturist, doing the bison and calf installation for us at Central Park. We had the pleasure of having him here for several days. He actually did some of the finishing touches, especially to the calf, while here in Carmel, we were able to include a couple of our summer camps on the very last day of camps to participate in that, and some of those kiddos will be able to say that they helped create the sculpture because he literally had them doing some of the handwork on it, which was pretty cool. So super excited about that.
If you haven't seen it yet, check it out on the screen.
On the picture, yeah. And will that show, can we capture that for the recording? Okay, thank you. And it looked like the Extended School Enrichment and the Monon Center were all trending in a positive direction.
Absolutely.
So,
Yep. Summer's wrapped up. Very pleased to announce that, I think things went very well. It was a bit of a wetter season at the water park. But overall, I think attendance was the second highest it's ever been. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mike. I think 2019 was kind of the top number we've ever had. This year was right behind it.
excellent. All right, if there are no further questions for Curtis on the staff reports, let's move on to the committee reports. And the Finance Committee met. Linus, in the absence of Lynn, would you give a short report?
Yes, the Finance Committee met and reviewed the budget proposal. And with that review process, the recommendation of favorable is being passed on to the board.
Okay, and that committee met on July 23rd. Master Plan Review Committee, Jen?
Thank you. Linus, would you give the summary from the last meeting, please?
The Master Plan Review Committee met, I don't remember the date now, it was about a week ago Thursday. And 2 weeks? 25th, yes. Met, we're having a series of meetings. Next meeting is this coming Thursday, and the final meeting is a week from this Thursday. But the Master Plan Review Committee has been meeting on a pretty regular basis, going over the master plan chapter by chapter, and is finding tweaking it, getting it cleaned up for presentation to the board.
Any questions from other board members for the committee reports? Okay, then can we at least review the minutes if there are any additions or corrections and wait for a vote, or we should wait
We should
until our
wait for that.
quorum?
If you'd like to jump down to number 12.
Oh, yes, the Strategic Funding Committee. Michael, if you'd go ahead and give us.
Sure, the committee actually did not meet, but related to a topic that the Strategic Funding Committee is focused on. The city council will be considering an ordinance at their meeting this coming Monday, the 19th. The meeting's at 6 p.m., but the ordinance is to introduce the proposed third amendment to the interlocal cooperation agreement between the city and township that creates the park system. What this amendment would do, which was initiated by the department, is actually provide effectively a 2-year extension to the current composition of the park board. So 4 mayoral, 4 township trustee, 1 school board appointment, which would give us a little bit more time as the lit from local income tax from the township expires as far as their financial commitment to provide any to the department, to give us an opportunity to identify a new capital funding source. So that is a positive first step. It would not surprise me if council takes that to committee as opposed to waiving the reading and approving it on the first reading. But again, a positive first step, which also allows potential additional discussion on the topic of the interlocal and any other appropriate amendments to it.
And funding
And
discussions.
funding, more
Yeah,
importantly.
which is the important part. At 6:13, I'll note that Jim Garrettson arrives, and we now have a quorum. Welcome, Jim.
I apologize.
That's fine. Accepted. We're at minutes now. So I'll move along for the minutes. Mr. Secretary?
Yes. I move to approve the minutes of the park board meeting dated July the 9th of 2024.
Is there a second? I just had one question. Did we convey to the city to be sure that they were looking at the covenants on the Monon as they were discussing alcohol potentially on the Greenway now?
That was advised to Corporation Council.
Okay, thank you. Any corrections or additions to the minutes? All those in favor of approval signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Minutes approved unanimously. Now we will move on to financial reports. Linus, you're going to get to do the honors in
Oh,
his
very good.
absence. Is that okay?
Yes. I move to acknowledge the receipt of the consolidated financial report for June 24, and I also move to acknowledge the receipt of P&L statements for July of 2024.
Thank you for the second, Jen. I just had one question. So why do we have June but not yet July? Is that when we have
So-
one?
For the consolidated financial report, that is completed based off the reports that we received from the city's finance department, the Penimation reports, which lag a month.
Lag, okay,
And the P&L are our self-generated
internal
ones, so
ones.
we're more,
okay,
we can print those more timely.
okay. Are there any questions or concerns about the two reports? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Carried unanimously. We'll move on to claims. Claim sheet for August 13th. Linus?
Yes. I move to approve the claim sheet dated August the 13th of 2024. Second.
Okay. Jonathan, you seconded this time. Okay, thank you. Any questions on the claim sheet? If there are none, all in favor of claim sheet for August 13th, 2024, signify by saying aye.
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 No opposed? Okay, carried unanimously. Clay Township claim sheet. Oh, Jim?
The buffalo and the calf were $44,000.
That was the most recent claims. The buffalo itself was $55,000. That was the cost of the actual sculpture. The transportation and installation expenses bring the total expense to approximately $135,000.
And the calf,
That, the 55,000 was for both. It's,
both.
it's considered one, even though it's two pieces, it's one sculpture. So that both of them collectively were 55,000.
And you're referring to the township claim sheet, right, Jim? Which is,
I'm sorry?
you're looking at the township claim sheet.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Entertain a first move to approve. Linus, did you do that?
For the claim of township?
Yes.
Yeah, I'll do that now.
Okay.
I move to approve the Clay Township claim sheet dated August 13th,
Second?
2024.
Okay, Jim seconded. Any further questions? All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Thank you. Okay, Linus payroll.
Payroll? Yep. I move to approve the payroll, wages, and liabilities for the payrolls dated July 12th and July 26th of 2024.
Thank you, Jen, for second. I just have a question. Do we say approve even though these have actually already been paid, or are we actually ratifying?
I
One
think
and the same.
One and the same?
One and the same.
Doesn't make a difference here? Okay, thank you. Any questions about payroll? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Approved unanimously. Okay, we'll move on to monetary gifts, grants, partnerships, and sponsorships. Eric?
Thank you. We had 3 contributions for the month of July. First off, we had a $500 sponsorship towards the Water Park Cabanas from Merrifield Exteriors LLC. And so that should round out our Water Park Cabana sponsorships for this year. And then, as most of you would have witnessed last month at the Park Board meeting, we received a grant from the Carmel Clay Parks Foundation in the amount of $20,000 for invasive species management. And then we had another sponsorship from Scent Hound, Indiana, for our Monon Greenway dog pot stations of $500. So they right now have been doing that quarterly. This is the third quarter that they've provided that sponsorship. And then a donation of $100 from our anonymous donor for staff appreciation, bringing our total to $21,100 for last month.
Question?
Jim?
Yes, sir.
On the grant of $20,000 for invasive species, what's that for?
So the Parks Foundation specifically then gives that to the department for us to then, we issue certain POs for invasive species removal or
Of what?
restoration. So
Invasive species of fish or?
plants. So it may be honeysuckle, garlic mustard, a number of different invasive species plants.
Where are we
typically.
doing that?
We do it through a lot of the different parks. I would say one of our bigger areas right now is still managing some of Central Park.
Why does it take $20,000 and it's not in our budget?
It actually takes more than $20,000 a year for a lot of what we do managing that. So Curtis can.
We ran the
elaborate, I
numbers,
think.
we ran the numbers for the foundation, and we're annually spending around $100,000 in invasive species management. So this is
You spend $100,000?
easily, yeah, absolutely. And it is included in our budget request. We do budget for invasive species. I'll talk about that this evening. It's in our 2025 request as well. But yeah, it's park system wide. It's something that we're always trying to stay on top of.
Quite frankly, we could spend $1 million annually and we
Yeah.
would still not remove
Exactly.
all the invasives in the park system.
Answer my question.
I move to graciously accept and thank the donors for this money.
Is there a second? Okay, Linus, thank you for a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Passed unanimously. Okay, we'll move on to the main event, new business, consideration of the 2025 budget.
All right, thank you. Everybody's favorite presentation every single year, budgets. As Linus noted, we did meet with the Finance Committee on July 23rd, best birthday present they could ever give me. And we did get a favorable recommendation for this year's budget request. So happy to present it tonight. I would be remiss if I didn't mention that I've got Jennifer Brown, our Extended School Enrichment and Summer Camp Series Director with us, and also Mike Norman, our Recreation and Facilities Director with us. They'll be presenting their respective budgets when we get to the 108, 109, and 110 funds. Michael Allen's running a little bit late, but he'll also be here just to help explain any questions that you might have pertaining to the general fund and our fleet, our proposal for some additional fleet vehicles this year. And then Eric's at all the park board meetings, but I think it's important to note that we did conduct a compensation study. We do that every 3 years as part of this budget proposal or this budget season. And Eric was instrumental in helping pull together the data and put that report together. So when we get to the salary resolution this evening, he'll be presenting that to the park board. Just to start off, I'll give you just a big picture perspective of our combined budgets for 2025. Our total projected expenditures are $26,921,214. Those total expenses associated with the budget can be broken down really into two buckets, operating and capital. The operating budget request this year is $19,633,420. These are funds that we need to cover staffing, supplies, and services of the department. And then the capital, which comprises $7,287,794. Those are funds that we need for planned capital improvements park system-wide. The department has several funding sources. First and foremost, the ESC 108 fund, the MCC 109 fund, and the Rec Facilities 110 fund are projected to generate income totaling $13,345,700. And as proposed, all three funds are projected to achieve over 100% cost recovery. The 2025 fund request of the City of Carmel this year was $8,496,173, which I'm going to discuss more in depth in the slides to come here in a little bit. But that comprises the general fund request 101 and the 103-1101 cash account, which is the park capital fund, combined total. This year I wanted to point out that approximately $5,230,000 of the total expenses are attributed to a budget appropriation request for existing but unappropriated dollars and the non-reverting Park Capital Fund 103, cash account 1103, and also the Park Impact Fee 106. So both of these budgets do require both Park Board and City Council approval, but we do have dedicated funding available in both funds via cash reserves. So there's no additional funds being requested for the City of Carmel. We're just asking that funds be appropriated so that we can use them in 2025. Just to remind the Park Board, the lit reserves, the 103-1103 cash account, those are funded solely with local income tax received from Clay Township. So in the past, those funds were managed by, until 2024, were managed via Clay Township via what is known as the 1215 fund. Now we receive a check each month, or we have to invoice Clay Township each month, and we receive the funds and we deposit them into the 103-1103 cash account. So I just want to make sure that I point that out. And then PRIF reserves are Park and Recreation Impact Fee Fund reserves.
One note, I think you said since 2024, but we started depositing it into 103 in last year, so 2023.
Oh, okay. Towards the latter part of the year, I
Yeah.
believe. Yeah, probably right.
Can I add, Curtis, that change in how the fund is handed, I see Jim leaning over to talk about it, was required by the State Board of Accounts.
Thank you. That's a good point. Yeah, that was something that the State Board of Accounts pointed out to Clay Township, is that my understanding is that they didn't want the funds to be moved out of their general fund, basically, into a separate account. So moving to the next slide, like I mentioned previously, this year's funding request to the city of Carmel is $8,496,173. And if you look at this from a percentages perspective, if approved, the city would provide funds for approximately 33% of our total operating expenses and 28% of our total capital improvement budget. So again, we're a high cost recovery agency, so we're actually generating via earned income most of the funds that we need for operations. And then the city is providing about 28%, so the other 72% of the capital funds that we're budgeting for 2025's use are via lit or park and recreation impact fees. So I also wanted to mention that Michael and I have met with the mayor, the chief of staff, and the CFO. We met last week. And regarding the department's budget request for 2025, I think we're both very optimistic that the approximately $8.5 million request is going to be funded in some capacity. We might have to cut a little bit out of it. Not quite sure what that's going to look like quite yet, but and I did want to mention that, albeit the funding mechanisms could vary. There's some discussion about some of the items being included
just,
with other projects.
Curtis, would just hold on
Go
a
ahead.
minute here. Okay. Jim, have you got, would you let Curtis get through his at least presentation and then hold your questions till then? I don't- Is your mic's off at least, so we're not picking up double?
Yeah, so
Okay.
the,
Okay, go ahead.
of the approximate $8.5 million request, I think we're both optimistic that it's going to be funded, but the funding mechanisms could vary. So there's been some discussion about some of the items being included with other projects as part of a general obligation bond, or possibly even financing some of the projects through capital lease, or through the lease rental program that they have available to them. So, Jim, if you have a question, I'm happy to answer it, or I can keep going. Mark, okay, perfect. So let's talk about the General Fund 101 budget this year. The total proposed budget is $6,446,173. That is an increase of 7% or $400,909 from the 2024 budget. You might be wondering what's driving that increase. Really, personnel services represents a majority of that increase. Almost $270,000 of that $400,000 is attributed to personnel services. We're budgeted for 34 full-time positions, which is the same number of staff that we're budgeted for this year. We are allowing for a 4% merit increase for full-time staff. Usually we budget for merit increases based off some guidance that we receive from the city. Atypically, that looks like a 3% cost of living adjustment and longevity pay and step increases via the city. We're not quite sure exactly what percentage increase the city's going with this year, so we had to base it off the assumption that they're going to go with what they typically do. So if that were to change, Michael, I don't know if you want to weigh in on this. If that were to go up to 5%, we may approach the park board and make an adjustment later on. But right now, I think it's looking like it's going to be a 3% COLA.
Yeah, I think based on the current rate of inflation and everything, I don't anticipate us having to make any adjustments here. The up to 4% merit increase, I think, will be relatively consistent with what the city is doing, so.
Just want to also note that, even though we're budgeting for that 4%, our staff still are subject to performance appraisal. So depending upon performance, they're eligible for a 1 to 4% pay increase each year. This also takes into consideration some adjustments that we're going to be recommending later on this evening based on a compensation study that we conducted this year. Again, we're doing that every 3 years, and then also takes into account a 10% increase to the employer share of health insurance. That number also could change depending upon if the city's insurance premiums are a little bit lower than the 10%, but we'll see. More to come on that. But right now we have a 10% allowance built into the budget. We're also budgeting for a $3,155 net increase in supplies. There's really several factors that are driving the increase. Really increased park usage, and especially within the Monon Boulevard and Midtown Plaza. We're accounting for repair parts for furniture, fixtures, and assets such as drinking fountains, swings, playground equipment, and umbrellas. And then we're also taking into account an increased cost of fuel. And then the balance of that is a $134,000 net increase in services. Really what's driving that is increased utility expenses, including water and sewer and electricity due to the reimagined splash pad at West Park, and also the conversion of the splash pad at Monon Boulevard from a non-recirculating, non-recirculating, or is it recirculating currently? Thank you, to a non-recirculating system. Getting a little bit backwards. And then also took into consideration the addition of the Matilda Haverstick trailhead that will be installed along the White River Greenway. We are proposing the transition of 2 additional technical service vehicles that are scheduled for replacement due to age and or mileage to the fleet leasing program. That'll be the last park board agenda item this evening, so we'll talk about that a little bit later, but that contributed around $31,528 to the budget request. And then about $16,000 in additional landscaping services for new properties and amenities. This includes at Bear Creek Greenway, the White River Greenway Trailhead, and the 106th Street Pedestrian Bridge Trailhead. We're anticipating around $9,630 in increased fees for services for trash pickups with Republican Rays. And also this includes additional funds for increased pickup schedules just to keep up with the demand that we have in our parks. Our parks are busier, so we have additional trash pickups that we need to conduct. And then we have an additional $7,250 built into the services increase for splash pad maintenance, and then planned repairs to the shuffleboard, ping pong, and billiard equipment at Midtown and Monon Boulevards. Let's talk about the top 5 expenses because they kind of tell the story of the budget request this year. Our top 5 expenses are personnel, which is around $4,116,245, or 64% of our total budget request. Again, we're budgeted for 34 full-time positions in 2024. Grounds maintenance, it comes in at number 2 at $687,188, or 11% of the total budget request. This is our contracted mowing and landscape services. Other contractual services is $404,475, or 6% of the total budget request. Again, this also includes the proposed contract with the Carmel Police Department to provide 2 park resource officers to assist with park patrols, community engagement, staff trainings. This also includes human resource information systems, our asset management work order software, and other things like that, other softwares. Utilities makes up 5% of the budget request, or $321,880. This is your electric, natural gas, water, sewer, cable, phone, and trash. And then other leases and rentals is $174,920, or 3% of the total budget. This is this is our fleet leasing program, basically. At least most of the budget is. So this year, in 2025, we're budgeted to lease 16 vehicles. Again, transitioning 2 vehicles from our current inventory to the fleet lease program. That top 5 total is $5,704,708 and makes up 88% of the total budget. So again, it kind of paints the picture of where the expenditures are coming from. Happy to answer any questions with regards to the general fund. If not, I'm going to move on. Our non-reverting park capital fund 103 budget request, specifically the 1101 cash account. So this is the cash account that is received as part of the general fund budget request. But basically, the budget request this year is $2,050,000, an increase of $50,000 from 2024. Again, the sole purpose of this funding source is for capital improvement projects park system wide. The 1101 cash account, again, is fully funded by the city of Carmel, and the majority of this budget is actually $1 million. It's for phase 1 of Bear Creek Park, and will serve as the land and water conservation grant matching funds should be awarded a grant by Indiana DNR. So Eric's brought this to the park board a couple of meetings ago, but we're applying for land and water conservation funds so that we can begin development at Bear Creek Park. And we have about a $3.9 million project identified, a nice phase 1 project that would include a parking lot, nature play, picnic shelter, about a mile's worth of trails, and then just some restoration or invasive species management. So hopefully we get that grant. I know the application's been submitted and we should find out later this year. The remainder of the request is really for capital improvement projects, including continued rebranding of the Monon Greenway signage. This is everything that's outside of the central core. If you've been along the Monon Greenway, the signage that used to be red is starting to fade. It needs updated. We started phase one. We're actually getting ready to start that install here in the next couple of weeks. So you'll see some new signage going in. So a big part of that request is to continue rebranding the signage along the Greenway. And then we're also planning for some repairs to Structure 21, which is a culvert lining project. This is something that was recommended in the City of Carmel Engineering and Structure and Inventory Report. City of Carmel Engineering Structure and Inventory Report. That's a bit of a tongue twister. And then we've got some additional security infrastructure improvements within Central Park planned, around $250,000, including fiber and security cameras to assist with proactive monitoring of the site. We used to have a fiber mesh that was intact pre-cybersecurity infiltration back in 2020. That mesh no longer is working, and the city isn't as prone to utilize it because of some security risk. So what they're recommending is to actually install or run fiber to each of the parking lots and have new cameras installed. So a majority of that cost would just be getting the fiber to the different parking lots. But it's a big investment, and it's something that the police department's been asking us to upgrade for the last year or so. So hopefully we can figure out a way to make that happen. And then, Jim, this is to answer your question earlier. We are budgeting for hazard tree removals, invasive species management, and then some trail counter upgrades as well within this budget request. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions with regards to the 103-1101 cash account. Yes, sir.
What percentage of last year's budget did we return to the city?
I have the information in my binder, I believe. I don't know it off the top of my head, but I can get it to you before the end of the meeting.
Idea.
I do have the information. I can get it for you. I'll have it for you in the next 5 or 10 minutes.
Okay.
When the staff comes up, I'll look it up and I can let you know.
Do you remember whether it was significant or not
I feel like it was close to 100,000. It might have been a little bit over it.
in the whole budget?
Correct.
And the budget this year is how much more than last year?
Around 400,000, 459,000, I believe.
And that percentage is, what's that, a percentage?
Of the total
increase?
budget request?
This year's budget over last year's budget's what percentage increase?
I don't know off the top of my head. Do I have it in my, is it 7%? Thank you. 7%.
7%.
Correct, yep.
And the mayor has looked at this and approved it?
She has. We did get some feedback today. It sounds like they might be requesting that we cut 2 to 3% out. And we've asked some additional questions with regards to the employer share of insurance and some of that different stuff, so that we can figure out what we're going to cut, if anything. Michael, I don't know if you want to elaborate on that.
Yeah, the city's still evaluating their proposed expenses for next year that'll be funded out of the general fund versus the anticipated revenues. So they have asked each of the departments, not just parks, to look at 2 to 3% potential cut. Not saying that they will, but we will look at that. But we have some follow-up questions as far as what the actual rates are for insurance, because that will help us determine what, if any, amount that we would propose cutting out of the budget. So.
The council has not seen this yet?
No, the council, the mayor's final budget proposal will be presented to the council at their workshops on September 25th and 26th. The lineup for those presentations has not been announced yet. The council also will, which has become sort of the tradition to city councilors, so we've been assigned councilors. Taylor and Ayers will meet with Curtis and me, and we'll go over our budget presentations, so that there's at least 2 counselors that do a deep dive in our budget before it goes and is discussed with the entire council. So those will be forthcoming, and it is my understanding that the formal budget will be presented to the city council in October. So that's when they'll have the budget hearing, or the public hearing on it in October.
And all they can do is cut, right?
That is correct.
Mr. Garrettson, I do have your answer with regards to how much funding we returned in 2023. It was $235,939.51.
You were off quite a bit.
I was way off, way off.
Mark, go ahead.
Yes, Mark.
A question, when you talked about installation of fiber to replace the mesh system, are there conduits still in place from when we did the mesh system? And can they be used, or is it a complete new installation?
I think it's going to be a completed new installation. I kind of asked Morgan the same question because it would be nice if we were able to utilize some of the existing infrastructure, but it sounds like it's going to be a pretty much a complete replace.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions from board members on these budgets? And Curtis, just remind again, a portion of this is existing funding in the 103. Is that,
So when we get to the 1103 cash account where the lit funds are deposited now, I'll actually present that completely separate. That's going to be agenda item B under new business.
gotcha, so this is new.
This is
It's
all new.
1101.
This is all new
1101.
money.
Okay.
Correct.
All right, thank you. Okay, shall we go through all of the budgets and then take the vote at the end, or would you like to do?
Yeah,
what
so
would you prefer?
typically we'll go through the non-reverting funds, 108, 109, and 110, and the user fees, and then the park board can take action at that time.
Okay,
Yes, sir.
I read where the mayor indicated we were going to zero-based budgeting. Is this budget built that way?
We've always budgeted that way, so
We
this
have.
wasn't a big change for us. Yeah, we start from scratch every single year. The management team basically they'll go through every line item and they'll build their budgets from $0 all the way up to the presentation and what we provided the park board. So it wasn't really a big change for us. I know that some of the other departments, it was a bit of a learning process for them, but I think once they get acclimated to it, it'll be a little bit easier.
Okay.
okay, please proceed.
Madam President,
Yes, Jim?
I move to approve Resolution B 2024-002.
Jim, we are short one member for a quorum right now because Linus took a break for a moment, so if we'll just sit tight and
Why did I come here?
we needed you.
Yeah, we did need you.
Came here to make a quorum.
Let's, we can go ahead and continue on with 108, 109, and 110, and then we can, the
Back.
board can take action on both operating budgets after those presentations, if that's okay. Okay. Jennifer Brown, I will call you up next.
Hello, Jen Brown, ESE and Summer Camps Director. Glad to be with you this evening. I'm here to present the Extended School Enrichment Fund 108 proposed budget tonight. And we are anticipating revenues in 2025, $5,865,000, and expenses totaling $5,809,307. This gives us 101% cost recovery for 2025. Our top revenue sources are the fees for our ESE after-school programs, and those total about 70% of our revenue. The other 30% comes from our summer camp fees. And then less than 1% is everything else, so sponsorships, donations, etc. Our top 5 expenses in 2025, personnel is the top expense, coming in at $4,203,344. This equates to about 72% of our total expenses for 2025. Our field trips and bus rentals, so $369,760, about 6% of expenses. These are the bus trips and field trips that we take during the summer months with our campers. Facility rentals, that's about 5% of our top expenses, $280,650. This is for use of the Monon Community Center, Jill Perlman Pavilion, Wilfong Pavilion, Leto Family Sports Center, and also the 3 Carmel Clay School middle school facilities. So rentals for those, once again, primarily during the summer months. This also includes a new lease in this building, the John Hensel Government Center, where our ESE admin offices will hopefully move later on this year. Other professional fees accounts for 4% of our total expenses, $225,000. These are payment processing fees, payroll expenses, bookkeeping services. Food supplies account for about 2% of those expenses, $127,500. These are the snacks that we purchase from Carmel Clay Schools to feed the children in our after-school programs. So that's about 90% of the total expenses for 2025. And a few notable accomplishments. We just kicked off our 19th school year offering the extended school enrichment program to Carmel Clay School families. We're very proud of that. We served 1,826 students in our after-school program last school year, so 2023-2024 school year. And this past summer, 2024, we had 7,271 camper enrollments in our summer camp series. Any questions?
Are there any questions for Jen? Go ahead, Mark.
Jen, I wanted to ask you this when we met earlier. Easy Track, is that still working well for registrations for you?
Yes, we love Easy Child Track. It works extremely well for us. It's a system that is tailored to the types of programs that we offer. We're actually working really hard this school year to utilize the Easy Child Track app, which is something that parents and guardians can download and pull calendars and bulletins and different information about our programs, both on a program-wide level, but also specific to the school site. So we're really trying to direct parents to that app because it is kind of a one-stop shop for all the information that they need for their children attending our programs. Our Parent Advisory Council, which is comprised of parents that have students attending our ESE programs, they actually requested sort of that one-stop shop for all of the information that comes out, just for ease of use for parents who are extremely busy and have a lot going on. So that's something that we're really working hard on this school year. We're excited about that.
I'm sure that'll be a big help. How about for summer camps? Do you use Easy Track for that as well?
Yes, we do.
So
We
you'll
use
be
it
able to
for-
have the same functionality for the summer camp
Yes,
kids?
yes.
Great.
And during the summer, we really use the system. It has a text feature. So say that maybe a bus is running a little bit behind from a field trip, we can send a quick text out to parents at that camp because we can drill it down, either do something, once again, camp-wide. So all of our summer camps are really drilled down by camp specific. And it's a good platform for us to use to just get parents quick information about the program.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Any other questions regarding this budget? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll move to Recreation and Facilities Fund 109. Actually, it's MCC Fund.
All right. Evening, everybody. For those of you that do not know me, I'm Mike Norman, Direct and Facilities Director. So we will run through the MCC 109 fund. So in summary, revenues are $7,241,200. Expenses are $7,174,062. equating to cost recovery of 101%. The top 5 revenues, so obviously memberships, 4,471,000, or 62%, and that's annual, monthly, day pass. Sorry, I'm about to get the day pass. Seasonal passes. So next on the list, day pass in our 10 punch visit option, 1,550,000, or about 21%. And we know the vast majority of that is our water park usage. Coming in next, recreation program fees, 524,000, or about 7%. Concessions and vending, 240,000, or about 3%. And aquatic program fees, 197,000, or about 3%. So the top 5 total, as you can see, 6,982,000, which is 96%. Memberships and day pass revenue is 86% of total revenue. Top 5 expenses, so personnel, obviously, 3,965,169. So that funds, the 109 funds 18 full-time staff. We are proposing, bear with me, sorry. So we are proposing to add 1 full-time position in the aquatic subdivision. That would be a full-time lifeguard. So historically, our indoor aquatics, specifically our daytime hours, we open at 5 a.m. We are open until 9 p.m. during the week. So that 12-hour window between 5 a.m. and 5 p.m. has always been challenging to staff. This position gives us a little bit of flexibility with that. In addition to some postseason potential, as Curtis mentioned earlier tonight, with our attendance this year was the highest since we've had postseason. So we have not been able to offer postseason due to staffing challenges, and that's primarily because of lifeguard shortages. So that gives us some potential there. We also only have 2 full-time managers in the aquatics division currently. They oversee our largest, by far, part-time team of roughly 200 staff. That is seasonal, but definitely requires a large amount of training, hiring, onboarding, et cetera. And then this also creates an entry-level supervisory position within our aquatic subdivision, which puts us in line with member services, recreation programming, just creating a little bit of career growth and professional development there. So again, that is $3,965,169, or about 55%. Utilities, $765,400, or about 11%. Repairs and maintenance, $360,500, or about 5%. Cleaning services, $342,000, or about 5%. And then marketing and printing, $290,000, about 4%. So that top 5 total is $5,723,069, or about 80% of the total budget. And then I will note for 2025, we have no recommended increases to pass rates or memberships or day passes. And I'll also note we did have pass increases in the years previous, 2022, 2023, and 2024. So that about wraps up 109. Any questions?
Excellent. Any questions for Michael? Another very nice presentation. Thank you.
We'll go right to the 110 fund.
All right, so we will jump to the 110, the Parks and Rec Facilities Fund. So in summary, revenues are $239,500. Expenses are looking to be $203,878. So the top 3 revenues, dog park fees coming in at $115,000, or about 48%, and that's based on roughly 700 dog park memberships. Facility rentals, $72,000. So as Jen Brown mentioned, that a bulk of that, 30%, is rental fees for the pavilions for summer camp usage. And then park shelter rentals, about 50,000 or 21%. And that's just picnic shelter rentals. Top 5 expenses, utilities, 39,100 or about 19%. Repairs and maintenance, 29,750 or about 15%. Cleaning services, 26,000 or about 13%. Furniture fixtures, 25,000, roughly 12%. And then general insurance, 19,200 or about 9%. So that top 5 total is $139,050 or roughly 68%. Yes, please.
The 25,000 for furniture and fixtures, what do you buy with that?
I believe that specifically is going to be for installation of additional shade structures within the dog park. Currently, there is a shelter, a gazebo-style shade within our large dog area, or our all-dog area, I should say. But we do not have adequate shade in the small dog-specific area.
And it's 25,000 for shade?
We budgeted 25,000, yes.
Okay.
Jen?
So I know that you said that we receive user fees for dogs for 700 dogs. But I've driven by and there's not 700 cars or dogs at one time, not like if you drive by like Broad Ripple or someplace like that. So on a high busy day, how many dogs would you say? I mean, given a car could have more than one dog, right? How many would you say would be there on a high day?
I mean, that is a fair question. I probably could find that information. I would be guessing. I know it would fluctuate based on the season.
Yeah.
Obviously, weekends and you know, favorable weather, there's higher usage. I could certainly compile some information for you. Yeah, I agree. Obviously, all the members do not come at one time, but we do have to consider if they were all to come at one time, you know, the impact that would have on the turf and the physical elements of the dog park. So we have to balance increasing membership with just general maintenance and upkeep of the grounds.
And if I could add on to that, it's not only the idea that all would come at once, which we know would never happen, but the collective wear of that total membership that we have. You know, we know that if we get above a certain threshold, even though they're not all there at once, there's going to be so much wear and tear that we have a muddy mess that's very similar to what has historically been at Broad Ripple. So we monitored that very closely.
I guess what I'm looking for is on our highest day, say summer, for each season, what would have been our highest day? And I know you may not have that information tonight, and that's totally fine. Because I don't think we've even come close to, say, 100 dogs at a time.
Probably not.
Yeah, so that's just what I'm looking at, which I think it just speaks to how we've managed, you all, not me, I haven't had anything to do with it, managed, you know, our membership and opening certain areas and making sure we have different areas for different dogs and so on. I will say the shade is probably a problem, but other than that, but.
Yeah, we don't want to have an appearance of discriminating against the small dogs, even though I'm a big dog person, so.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Yeah, I'm happy to pull that info and get that to you.
Judy, just one question.
Yes, Jonathan, go ahead.
Michael, thanks
Yes.
for your presentation. Just one quick question. The park board cover sheet for the budget indicates that proposed revenues are $193,200 with proposed expenses being $151,160. Is clarification if that was the typo or if it was missed on the presentation.
Is this for 110? Sorry.
Yeah, park board, Park and Rec Facilities Fund 110.
And you're saying it is not reflecting revenues 239,500 and expenses 203,878?
Right.
Sorry, the correct numbers are revenues as reported, 239,500 for projected revenues for 2025, and expenses, including the 25,000 of 203,878. So,
Thank you.
Is that Exhibit C, Michael?
yeah, that's in Exhibit C, correct.
Okay, so do we need to amend what's in front of us here?
Let me,
or-
let me quick look at the,
Okay, and then you'll let us
the
know?
resolution and make sure that that's nothing wrong with that.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
Now we can entertain motions for operating budgets.
I think we have to wait. We have to wait.
What- Yeah, we're going to get Exhibit C,
Oh.
make sure we've got the right number.
Yeah, so the cover sheet isn't the governing authority, it's the actual resolution. The resolution references specifically Exhibit C without a dollar amount there, so approval of the resolution will not create any issues. And we'll adopt the appropriate amount.
Okay, Michael, point me right to the spot so I can keep track of all of the resolutions.
Sorry, I was
On the
looking up
cover sheet, is what you're saying?
So I
So
can-
the resolution B 2024-003, which approves the 2025 non-reverting operating budgets, the actual resolution simply references the exhibits, and then the exhibits have the actual dollar amounts on it. So since the exhibit has the correct,
So the motion is just to approve Resolution B 2024-002 and Resolution B 2024-003.
yeah, correct.
And I can move for 002, 003, and 004, right? No, I've
Well, I
lost-
think 002 and 003 are the ones that they would like to have together. So
Okay.
yes, you can move for both of those.
So I move for approval of Resolution B-2024-002, adopting the proposed 2025 General Fund 101 and Park Capital Fund 103-1101 budgets, and Resolution B 2024-003, adopting the 2025 non-reverting operating budgets and user fees.
Second.
Is there a second? Okay, Jonathan. Any further discussion on those two resolutions? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Unanimously carried. Okay, 2 and 3 are, and you'll have so is C correct?
Yes, see,
That's in here? It
Yep.
was the slide that was actually.
this
just-
slide,
Okay.
it was the,
I just wanted
It's
to
just the
double,
cover sheet.
the cover sheet had probably last year's numbers or a typo.
okay, I just wanted to double check.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. All right, then moving on, Curtis.
All right, we're moving on to new business, item B, consideration of 2025 budget appropriations. Again, this agenda item is pertaining to Park Capital Fund 103, the 1103 cash account, and also the 106 Park and Recreation Impact Fee Fund. We discussed this, I discussed this a little bit earlier in the presentation, but again, both of these budgets require approval by the Park Board and the City Council, but the budget request is to appropriate funds that we have available from cash reserves. So this is not new money, this is funds that we already have available. We're just asking the Park Board and the City Council to appropriate those funds so that we can use them for capital improvement projects. So let's talk about the non-reverting Park Capital Fund 103 cash account 1103. The total appropriation request this year is $3,553,000. Again, this cash, the 1103 cash account, are funds received from Clay Township with regards to local income tax that they receive. The projects included as part of this budget include improvements to Founders Park Playground and parking lot. Basically, similar to what we did with Westermeyer Commons this last year, the playground safety surfacing at Founders Park needs to be replaced. If you've been out there, there's an area through the middle of the park that's basically a large sandbox is what I'll call it. That sand has had a detrimental effect on the impact attenuation of the safety surfacing. So we're planning a full replacement of that. Also planning to remove the sand and put in a new play feature, something not a full-on splash pad, but think of like misting components or something along those lines. We also have some fencing repairs that we need to make to the playground. And then the wall, there's a path, there's a walking path from the bottom part of the playground to the top that's basically moving away from the pathway that we basically need to repair. So plan to shore that up a little bit. We also have planned parking lot improvements as part of this budget. And Michael and I talked about, if the budget will allow it, also potentially putting some type of fishing pier or something similar to what we have at Meadowlark Park out there. So again, we'll start to plan that project this next year with funds available in the 1103 cash account. But we're expecting those renovations to come in at a price at around $1.5 million. We're going to continue developing the White River Greenway. So we're Carrie Berger, our resource development coordinator, has applied for a active transportation infrastructure grant. So we included some matching funds for that in here. We also have additional development that's occurring along the Greenway, the south extension, continued improvements to the north extension that we're including in this budget. We've got some Monon Community Center Fitness Center upgrades. We deferred those to this year. Mike Norman and his team have brought a number of items that we'll bring to the park board later on this in 2025. But we also have some replastering of the indoor pools that we need to take care of as well. So I think we've got about $375,000 budgeted for those repairs. We have a large replacement of the Central Park Boardwalk. If you've been to Central Park lately, the boardwalk is starting to deteriorate. It was built in 2007. Our team has done a phenomenal job of maintaining it, but we're planning to install a system similar to what we've been putting in at some of our other parks. Like if you've been out to West Park along the perimeter path, we've got a nice Wickcraft system that's in place there. It's basically a modular system that comes, it's prefabricated, and we really like it. We have that system at West Park, we have it at Meadowlark Park, and we also have it at River Heritage. So it's a system that works really well for us.
How long does it last?
It'll last 50 years. It's made out of stainless steel and basically like the thank you, the recycled plastic Trex, like decking material. So it'll withstand the test of time. So we're pretty excited about that. And then we've got some repairs that we need to make to the retaining wall at Thomas Marcaselli Nature Park. We've been working on that project with Y Engineers, and we think that that's going to cost us about $250,000 to make those repairs. Basically, it's something that we inherited when we acquired the property, and we've just had a wall that's failed, and we need to make some improvements to that area. So with that, I will entertain any questions that you have with regards to this budget appropriation request.
Any questions? Okay, I'm going to.
Moving on, park impact fee 106. Total appropriation request is $1,684,794. And again, these are funds that are received from park impact fees. The sole use is for new capital development. It can't be used for repairs and replacements of existing infrastructure. And this budget is basically the balance of phase one of the development of Bear Creek Park. So again, we talked about this earlier. We've got this spread amongst several different budgets. We're hoping to get $1 million from Land and Water Conservation Fund. We have budgeted we have budgeted $1 million in the 103-1101 cash account that we're hoping the city will match, and then the balance of the phase one project will be utilizing park impact fees for. So $1,684,794. So Again, this request does assume that we receive the LWCF grant and that the city of Carmel provides the $1 million in matching funds. But with that, I'm happy to answer any questions with regards to the 106 Park and Recreation Impact Fee Fund budget appropriation request.
So Curtis, I just have a question. Is this existing cash now, or is this a projection on what?
Correct. So these two budget appropriations are for, we have cash reserves readily available. We're asking to have the funds appropriated so that we can use them in 2025.
Okay, so
for
these
these
park,
specific projects.
these park impact fees we have in hand?
We do.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay,
And again, if you desire, you can move B 2024-004 and B 2024-005 in a single motion.
Okay, so I move to approve Resolution B dash 2024-004 and Resolution B dash 2024-005.
is there a second?
Second.
Jonathan, thank you. Any further questions or discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried unanimously. All right, Curtis?
All right, the next two, this evening, there are two items on your agenda that pertain to the salary resolution. The first is a request to consider amending the department's 2024 salary resolution, and the second item is to adopt the 2025 salary resolution. As I mentioned earlier, this year we did compile an updated compensation study, which has become customary for our department to put together every 3 years. The study assists CCPR in evaluating the national competitiveness of salaries and wages for each respective CCPR position. And really, to be a nationally recognized park department, you got to have high quality staff, and to have high quality staff, you have to pay well. So it's ensuring that we're competitive with regards to salaries and wages. The information gleaned from the compensation study was used in helping make the recommendations that you're going to hear in the amended salary resolution and the 2025 salary resolution. And I thought I'd just give just a quick summary of what we're evaluating in the compensation study. So really, there are three components that we're looking at. We're doing a review of salaries paid by National Gold Medal winners. And this isn't over the test of time. This is recent National Gold Medal winners. So we evaluated winners from 2019 to 2023 in classes 2, 3, and 4, which are similar in population to the city of Carmel. We received responses back from 6 agencies: City of Westerville Parks and Recreation, which is in Westerville, Ohio; the Champaign Parks District, which is in Champaign, Illinois; Provo Parks and Recreation, which is in Utah; Greensboro Parks and Recreation, which is in North Carolina; and Des Moines Park and Recreation in Iowa; and then Tampa Bay Parks and Recreation in Florida. We're also conducting an assessment of salaries paid by comparable park and recreation agencies in neighboring Illinois. If you're asking yourself why Illinois, it's because they have a long recognized history of being one of the strongest park and recreation networks in the entire country. And since the inception of the National Gold Medal Award in 1965, Illinois agencies have won a collective 74 times, which is the most by far of any state. And our department compares very favorably to Illinois agencies, especially with regards to facilities, staffing, operating budgets, and operating models. So if you're asking yourself why we aren't comparing our department to Indiana agencies, it's because we just do things so much different than Indiana agencies, and Illinois is a better test of kind of how our operating model, so to speak. And then last but not least, we're also reviewing the salary schedule for the City of Carmel employees. We want to know how we stack up against city employees. This year, for this compensation study, we had to use 2024 information because we didn't have 2025 information available. So we had to make an assumption that proposed maximum salaries for City of Carmel employees was going to go up by that 3%. Like I said, typically we want to use real information. We just didn't have available to us. But I still think that the data that we gleaned from the compensation study was outstanding. And I'm actually going to have Eric Mill present the findings of the compensation study, and then that'll take us into the two motions for the resolutions.
Okay.
Thank you,
Eric?
Curtis. So like Curtis said, we have a pretty comprehensive report. The details of that report were provided to the Finance Committee for them to review in full. If any of you would like a copy of that report, happy to provide you with one. At any time, I've got copies with me here too if you choose to want one. But to kind of summarize things, our main item that we really identified throughout the study was the need to establish minimum salaries for all of our full-time positions. Those minimum salaries are outlined in the amended 2024 and proposed 2025 salary and wage resolutions being presented this evening. The goal with establishing the minimum salaries is to address some compression between our part-time and full-time staff members. Between labor market competition, inflation over the past couple of years, especially since COVID, CCPR has needed to increase the part-time wages fairly significantly in order to stay competitive in the area to attract the employees that we need for, especially these guys, to be able to operate their operations and keep us going. So in doing that, that has led to some of our part-time positions and some of our part-time employees either making equal to or in some situations more than some of our full-time employees on an hourly basis. In order to kind of alleviate that, we want to establish new minimum salaries for all those positions to ensure that we create kind of and maintain a wage gap between our full-time and our part-time entry-level full-time positions. Any questions on that? So those are, again, outlined in those salary resolutions to give you an idea of what those new minimums will look like. So secondly, in establishing these new salary minimums, the department had 20 employees that would be making less than what that new salary minimum is being proposed. So our second recommendation is to increase those employees to at least their salary minimum for their position. In cases where we had staff that had already been here for a couple years, or had higher education, things like that, that were already making a little bit more anyways. We also did a calculation to kind of see how their salary progression already currently was within their current salary range, and made some further adjustments to their salaries based off of that to try to keep that salary progression equal to about within 1% of where their current salary progression was. So for Jonathan, since you did this last time, I used their comp ratio. So trying to keep that within 1% of where they were before to try to keep their salary progression in a good standing. So. Consequently, also, whenever you're increasing the base salaries of a lot of your entry-level positions, that creates salary compression amongst other positions. So then they get closer to their supervisors, and then those supervisors get closer to their managers, and those managers get closer to directors, and everything. So it kind of creates a domino effect. So we did the same thing across the board since we created those salary minimums. That kind of changed where their comp ratio or their kind of salary progression within their salary range kind of fell. So we analyzed all of that as well, and we made some small tweaks to a bunch of the other full-time staff members in order to keep their salary progressions within that 1% as well. So that kind of kept everything fairly consistent across the board. So additionally, we recognize that part-time wages are going to continue to rise throughout the year in order to prevent future overlap with our part-time and full-time positions. We further recommend to implement an automatic 1% increase to that minimum salary. That will be effective in 2026, and then again in 2027. When we get to 2028, we'll be conducting another salary compensation study at that point. We'll see to make sure that we're still on track. But that allows us to, bring that minimum up for those full-timers, which then gives us a little bit more padding that if we need to bring up a little bit more on the part-time employees, we have the ability to do that with them running into those full-time salaries again. Recommendation 5 throughout the study is to further practice our increasing the maximum salaries based on the consumer price index for urban consumers. That's been our practice since 2018, is to constantly look at that consumer price index and then apply that kind of same ratio to our maximum salaries so that we can continue to grow those maximums as well. For the 2025 salary wage resolution presented this evening includes that 3.4% based off of the 2024 consumer price index. Recommendation number 6 is to increase the maximum salary of our Parks and Natural Resources Director. Throughout the study, when we looked at all of our comparables, it was very evident that the Parks and Natural Resources Director needed to be bumped up in salary grade to meet up with the other operational, 2 other operational divisions. So we're going to make that change. Next, the Department of Labor also released a final rule on exempt and salary thresholds. So the final rule established a timeline for increasing the minimum salary threshold for exempt employees from $684 per week or $35,568 per year, and moving that up to $1,128 per week or $58,656 per year by January of 2025. So that basically, if an exempt employee is going to be classified as exempt, and basically meaning they cannot earn overtime type of position, they have to make a minimum of $58,656 per year as part of their salary. So with this, we only have one position currently employed that this affects. So within that recommendation, because of the requirements of that position, this is our assistant manager that oversees the aquatic operations. We believe it's important to keep that position as an exempt employee. So we're going to be adjusting that salary to meet up with the new Department of Labor's standards. Within the analysis that we did of all the different positions, we also identified the need to restructure our HR department just slightly. This includes creating an HR generalist position. So the tasks that are being performed by our current HR coordinator will be taking on that HR generalist position. It just kind of matches up with the comparables that we saw, the language that a lot of the other departments were using as well. So we're just going to kind of make a tweak to that position a little bit. Lastly, we just, again, continue to plan to evaluate our salaries in the same manner every 3 years as we move forward, just to make sure that we're staying on trend. So with that, we can answer any questions. I know that was fast and a lot of summary within that document. But
I'd just add that, just as a reminder to the park board, historically, the salary resolution has really established the salary and wage maximums for each respective position. It's not what an employee actually makes. So as Eric alluded to, there are a couple things that we're changing with regards to this. So moving forward, the park board will be adopting a new salary resolution that includes minimum and maximum for each respective CCPR position.
Questions? Go ahead, Mark.
I want to applaud all of you for this. Probably out of all the things you have to do in the budget, this is the most complicated thing to manipulate, because as soon as you make a change anywhere, it throws everything completely out of whack. And I know as department heads, you all live with the consequences when it's not done right with your staffing. So congratulations, and thank you very much for the work that you've done on this.
Eric and I had a lot of meetings with regards to this, and I think we got it right. But I mean, you throw in the fact that we're also going through accreditation and putting together a new master plan, and it was a lot. So I'm extremely proud of the team for their hard work as well. You guys are absolute rock stars.
Any other questions for Eric or Curtis? And I concur in Mark's comments, because this gets so tricky, and the times we've lived through to get this all adjusted, refloated, so to speak, is just, and to be fair to everyone, is hard work.
Absolutely. The first resolution to amend salaries and wages for 2024 would go into effect pay period beginning August 17th. So that would go into effect the pay period that's beginning this Saturday. Again, the amendment would include establishing the salary and wage minimums immediately for full-time staff, and then the adjustments to pay for full-time staff whose current pay would fall below the salary wage minimum, and subsequently adjust pay for all the full-time staff to alleviate the compression, as Eric alluded to. So that's the amended salary resolution. The 2025 salary resolution encompasses the position title changes and all of the other items.
On this one, I would recommend that they be handled separately because you're amending a current resolution and then establishing the 2025 salaries. So I would deal with B 2024-006.
Okay, Jen?
I move to approve resolution being -2024-006.
Second.
Second, Jonathan, thank you. Any further discussion on that resolution? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, carried unanimously. Thank
I
Jen.
move to approve resolution B-2024-007.
Second.
Jen and Linus. Any further discussion? Questions? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carried unanimously.
Last agenda item is the consideration of 2025 fleet lease vehicles. I don't want to beat a dead horse here, but we're requesting funds to lease 2 technical service vehicles, or transitioning those to our fleet leasing management program with Enterprise as part of our 2025 budget request. Both of those vehicles do have lease trade-ins, so the fees for the lease will be offset by the trade-ins that we have. We've been working with Enterprise. I'm asking the board to approve a not-to-exceed amount of $3,200 per month for the cumulative, so together, for a Ford F-350 or Chevy 3500 or equivalent, one retrofitted as a dump truck, and the other Ford F-350 or Chevy 3500 equivalent retrofitted with a fuel and oil tank and a crane. We also received a preliminary trade-in of $20,500 per vehicle. So if we were to receive more than the $20,500 when those vehicles go to auction via Enterprise, the monthly fees would be decreased. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. And I hope that you have some, because Michael Allen hasn't had to answer any questions this evening. So if you have one, this would be the one to ask.
Any questions for Michael?
I'll ask a question. So just out of curiosity, the fuel oil tank and a crane, what would we be using that for?
Thank you, Jen.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Jen.
Yeah.
My leg was falling asleep there, so it's good to get up. So these are replacing trucks that we currently have in service. So we currently have a vehicle with a crane, and when you say crane, we're not talking about something huge that's going to have like a 30-foot boom on it, but it's a kind of a smaller boom, probably about 6 foot, but it can extend a little bit, and it helps us pick up things like generators, some of the heavier pallets and things that we would load into the back of a truck. So this, we'll be retiring or trading that vehicle in and replacing that with because we currently own it. So we'll be leasing the new vehicle and basically outfitting it the same. And I think that might be a typo where it says oil tank. It's a diesel tank, like an auxiliary diesel tank that we use to fill up our skid steer or our Kubotas or other machines that we have that are diesel operated. So it's kind of a spare tank on the back of the truck. And then the dump bed, we currently have a flatbed pickup truck that we use for our salt dispersal when we're doing snow and ice management. And so we think we could get a little bit more use out of that similar truck if we put a hydraulic dump on the back of it during the summer months. Because right now we have a dump trailer, but that doesn't get us into all those little small places that we want to get to when you're towing a trailer. So putting that similar use on the back of a pickup truck, we'll be able to take loads of mulch and gravel and things to some of our trails that are kind of harder to access.
That makes sense. I was thinking like the oil for like gravel, like roads. I was like, I don't know what the application is for that here. So thank you.
Yeah. Anything else?
Question.
Go ahead.
So the monthly fees, the retrofitting of the dump truck and retrofitting of the crane truck, those are additional fees on top of the 3,200 a month.
They'll be included in the monthly rate.
So that
Those
includes,
add-ons.
is Enterprise doing that work then for us?
They are on this one. Usually we do the aftermarket, like snowplow attachments and things like that. But because these ones are just a little bit more technical, we upfitted the last version, the version that we own. But we're happy to let them kind of build this. We've been working with a couple of their technical experts on this that have a little bit more expertise in how to upfit some of these more technical applications.
Okay, thank you.
And just to refresh the board's memory, we went through an RFP process last year for a fleet management program. I think it has a 3-year life. Is that right, Curtis, with the right to extend for 3 more years?
That's correct. Actually, we did it,
It was 2 years ago?
yeah, it was a couple years ago, yeah.
So you can, somebody manages, you can lease. You don't have to go out for bid to others.
Yeah, usually with the add-ons, I wanted to add, we typically try to, as Michael mentioned, we do the aftermarket in-house usually, because we don't want to acquire the additional, fees to basically rent, or, to the additional fees that you incur from having to lease those pieces of the equipment. But because this was so technical, in talking through with Enterprise, we thought this was the best move for both parties.
One additional follow-up, please. Does this include service, ongoing service for the life of the lease?
It does include a maintenance add-on, absolutely, which is oil changes and basic minor service repairs, but it doesn't include things like brake replacements or tires or some of those different things.
Oil changes and
Correct,
of that
yeah.
nature.
And if the board's ready to proceed, after conferring with council, you can combine the two motions.
Okay. Jen?
I would just add an "and" after 101 and pick up with "approve" in motion 2.
I move to authorize the director and the assistant director and each of them individually to lease 2 additional vehicles from Enterprise for the amount not to exceed $3,200 per month for lease and maintenance program payments as it pertains to the General Fund 101, and move to approve the trade-in of the 2018 Chevy 2500 and 2019 Chevy 3500 on such terms as approved by the director and assistant director and each of them individually.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Jonathan. Any other questions or comments on this motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carried unanimously. Thank you very much. All the big business is out of the way then, right? Okay. So we'll go on to old business.
No old business to present to the board tonight.
Okay. Attorney's report.
About a 30-minute report, if you'd like to settle in. No, it'd be 2 minutes. So we finalized during the last month, we finalized contracts with Lucky Climbers, which was no small feat. And they're pretty picky, and United Construction, and this is for the Kid Zone project. We prepared several iterations of the third amendment to the interlocal agreement in conjunction with the director and with council members, and we feel pretty good about where that is right now. In response to some of the comments made by this board and the township board, we did list in that third amendment as an exhibit all of the parks-related bonds that have been issued by the township since 2019, which totaled $37,549,689.90, and will result in payments by the township through 2042. So lots of people wanted to have that out there, exactly what have they done. That does not count the non-park department-related improvements like Badger Fieldhouse, the new fire headquarters, the improvements to 3 or 4 fire stations. So 37.5 million is what the township has invested in parks. We also worked through a response with Jen and Michael and others to an inquiry about a disabled individual at the summer camp. I think we answered those questions appropriately, and commend your staff for putting up with some challenges that a lot of us are not equipped to handle on a daily basis, and doing it well and professionally. And then we're responding to now kind of moving a civil rights claim for prior employee. My partner Joe Pettigrove is spearheading that. Happy to answer any questions. Oh, I should say Zach is still on the donation of some property to parks, which is still pending. That's it.
Any other questions for Brian? All right, moving right along to director's report.
So the big thing, which was previously reported, 8/19, or this coming Monday, the city council will be considering that third amendment that Brian referenced, and I referenced at the beginning of the meeting. So encourage any park board members that are available to attend that city council meeting, 6 p.m., city council chambers at City Hall. Also, a date of note, August 20th will be our 33rd anniversary. So the 20th is when both the city and the last of the two that executed the original joinder agreement that created the park system. So happy 33, Carmel Clay Parks and Recreation. I also will send the park board a written report later this week, just with other activities going on. Was not able to prepare that in advance, but that will be forthcoming. With that, I'd be happy to address any questions you may have.
Any questions for the director? All right, thank you, Michael. Let's move on to information items. Joshua is absent, so we won't have Plan Commission. Katie's absent, so there'll be no school board. No update from Parks Foundation. Climate action, Eric, anything to report?
We did have a meeting last month. The only thing to note, I think, is they were seeking some approval to have a full-time sustainability coordinator position formed within the city of Carmel to help navigate between different departments and help manage a lot of these initiatives. And so there were some committee members that had a meeting, a sit-down meeting with the mayor and everything, and was kind of told that would not be possible within this next year and probably not be put into the budget, at least for 2025. So our new direction is kind of trying to figure out how we can individually kind of work with each department to kind of help spearhead some of the initiatives within the climate action plan. But so there will be some further conversations. I think they're planning on going around and having some more meetings with individual departments, including parks, to start talking about how parks can maybe give a little bit more guidance, especially to some other areas to help with some of the natural areas and things around the city and whatnot. So that's kind of the general update.
Okay. Any other information items? Okay, park board comments, discussion? I just want to raise with park board members that when the township bond goes off and they are no longer capturing the lit that has helped fund the system for the last 20 years, Carmel and all the other units of government will benefit from that lit being redistributed to all the other units. So I've asked Michael to sort of use that as a talking point whenever he's talking now to the city fathers about getting funding for the park department for the capital projects going forward. So we're trying to figure out just maybe what that amount actually is, but we know it's at least $3 million. So between that and what they're going to recoup from the lawsuit with Fishers, regarding Fishers, I think hopefully they should have funds to keep the excellent program going. So I guess we're going to find out. Any comments from anyone else? Okay, then I would entertain a motion to adjourn here.
So moved.
Second.
Jen and Linus, and we are adjourned at 7:40. Thank you, everyone.